Where have Harley Davidson gone wrong, and have they failed the Harley Davidson community? Watch this video. Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well. So, according to some reports, Harley Davidson have been failing the Harley Davidson community, and they continue to, well, betray a lot of loyalties out there. Now, this is by some reports, some commentators out there. They're basically saying they're failing. They're failing as a company in some respects, or they're just hanging on. But they're failing. The biggest part of Harley Davidson is their identity with their overall fan base, their overall customer base. So what is this community? Well, let me just kind of draw back from this a little bit and talk about YouTube and YouTubers for a minute. If you ever watch YouTubers, they talk about their fan base quite a lot, bigger YouTubers, especially when they're trying to monetize them, and especially when they're trying to put them into memberships or put them onto Patreon, that kind of thing. And I would do the same, right? You're basically trying to create a community. You're trying to create a fan base that is loyal to you as an entity, as a YouTuber, for example. And you might hear some YouTubers talk about a community. They talk about their tribe. They talk about their core group, their followers, whatever it is. They're trying to build up a community. So that community becomes like an engine for the YouTuber itself. So they can also promote the YouTuber, they can promote whatever it is, they can swap ideas, so it becomes its own little thing. And that's what Harley Davidson did back in the 80s. When they had the buyout from AMF, they kind of went whole hog, pardon the pun, in this kind of community, and they were selling an idea of an identity of an American iconic brand. They weren't selling motorcycles. They weren't selling specifications on motorcycles because they were trying to compete with, the Japanese brands and that kind of thing. So they were thinking, well, we've had a terrible time with the AMF years. Lots of people either can't afford Harley Davidson, can't get them, or they just don't want them. They just prefer these other bikes. So we've got to be able to sell something and also create a community that people are really going to buy into. Right. So then we had obviously development of Harley owners groups. We had all the merchandising that was ramped up. But every kind of marketing strategy from that period on wasn't really talking about motorcycles per se. They were talking about the lifestyle. They were promoting freedom. How many times have you heard, somebody interview a biker and say, what does Harley Davidson mean to you? They'll always say, freedom. It's it's been ingrained into their psyche to say, yeah, freedom. And because Harley Davidson were pimping this idea for such a long time. Now, let alone the association or what motorcycle clubs, how they embrace Harley Davidson culture or American motorcycles in general to say, this is what we've got to ride, which they've kind of tried to, push that to identity away now, Harley Davidson. And then they went for this whole community thing. And then even in the 80s and the 90s, board members were quoting that we're going after dentists, we're going after accountants. These are the kind of people that we want to buy Harley Davidson motorcycles. And we want them to have our identity and take on our identity. So this is what I mean about pushing an identity onto a fan base or a customer base or a potential customer base, trying to draw people in just to the idea of the brand. Regardless of what the motorcycles is, it's that community trying to build a self-sustained engine or a self-propelling engine, as it were. That's what Harley Davidson did. They weren't selling the motorcycles. They were selling the idea. They were selling the story. Go on the long tour. You need this big touring motorcycle. You need this cruiser. You need a brand new motorcycle. You need to, wear the T-shirt, wear the cap. You need to put Harley Davidson tattoos all over your body. That kind of thing is what they really promoted. And guess what? They were fantastic at it. They did it so well that it kind of went a bit too far for some people. And, then they started seeing Harley Davidson everywhere in terms of corporate sponsorship. And then the whole company morphed into something more than a motorcycle company in terms of financing, in terms of brand licensing, that kind of thing. So it became more than motorcycles. It became merchandise. It became something, the bar and shield, the orange and black. That's what it became, as opposed to just being a motorcycle. And people went along with it. People just embraced it. So the whole community was built up until a point where the company were not feeding that community what they wanted anymore, where they weren't delivering what that community, who are still going to be brand loyal, who are still going to be, it's almost like the company is, a family member. That's what they feel. And it's that kind of association. It's a very strong bond. But reality is, it's not a bond at all. It's just something that's been created by the company and fueled by the company, so that it's always reinforcing Harley Davidson, or this identity of Harley Davidson, and almost trying to pull the wool over the eyes in terms of, what the motorcycles actually are, in terms of performance, in terms of specifications, in terms of build quality, all the other things. You kind of say, well, don't look too closely at that. Look at what it represents. So when you stop feeding that, and then when you start, almost betraying what some people have come to believe, in some people's eyes, I'm not saying this is in some people's eyes, then all of a sudden you start to have problems within that community, and the community starts to pull away, or because it's become self-sustaining, they'll say, well, we've got our own identity. We're going to still love Harley Davidson's of now and of the past, but we're not going to be within the way the company is going in the future. And we kind of saw that as the community, in inverted commas, whatever part of the community you want to look at, they kind of turn their noses up and turn their backs on the whole electrification thing, with Livewire. They turn their noses up and turn their backs on the street bikes that were produced not in the United States, they were produced in India. They turn their noses up on the Revolution Max engine bikes to a certain degree, most notably, I suppose, the Nightster and the Sportster S. Whilst there's a lot of love for those bikes, there's also not in many quarters. That there was more love for the Pan America as being something different, but less so for those other two bikes. So perhaps that's why, Harley Davidson haven't really been pushing out even more Revolution Max engine bikes. Maybe there was they could feel that actually the community was kind of pushing back a little bit. Now, they were still trying to push onto the community, the retro bikes, the heritage, oh, look at this bike. And they've started to up the prices and keep on upping the prices and keep on saying more and more expensive bikes, because the people they want in that community was always these, high value customers. These customers got deep pockets, these professionals, they're white collar riders. They're not blue collar people. That has long gone. That has all been pushed away over the years since the AMF days. It's all been pushed away. It's more about clean living, weekend riders who are just good. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's what your community has become, or that's what they've tried to steer this community in that particular direction. So the success of the company is really based upon satisfying the demands of that community now. It's not really based upon what kind of motorcycles that they believe they should be selling. It's really, can they satisfy that community? Now, we had this about 5-6 years ago, I believe, with the predecessor to Jochen Seitz, Matt Levitich, when we were talking about the Many Roads program. And many people within the community, and again, inverted commas, talking about, it's kind of diluting everything, trying to get Harley Davidson's to all these other countries and all these other markets is a good thing. But it's not the kind of motorcycles that Harley Davidson should be producing, especially with those street bikes. And you kind of think, well, okay, I can see what the community would think about that. Why don't you start listening to the fan base? Why don't you get out there? And what's been happening is there's been an increasing disconnect between the board, the company, and the designers and what people actually want. And I'm not talking about icon bikes, and I'm not talking about special edition bikes that everybody gets wild over and really enthusiastic about. I'm talking about the average person, what they're going to buy as a Harley Davidson. Now, let alone what's happened between the company and the dealerships as well. There's been friction there. There's been an imposing will of the company to make sure that dealerships operate in a certain way, that they identify with a certain brand. You know, they have to massive expense on dealerships just to keep the Harley Davidson license, as it were. And that's caused a lot of friction. We've seen so many dealerships close over the last 2-3 years as well, and this is partly because reducing demand, changing demographics, and changing tastes. Let's say people just don't want to spend that money, that increasing price tag, or what they believe is an ever expensive price tag on Harley Davidson products. Harley Davidson this year have reduced the Nightster price in certain markets, but those bikes aren't really selling anyway. So, and that's the community doesn't even really like that bike. So it's kind of, well, what have you done? Now, most people agree, and the community would agree, that the biggest mistake they've made is that they stopped selling the Sportster. How many times have we heard this? How many times have we said this? But nobody is listening. Now, they would say, oh, we can't bring an air-cooled Sportster back. Well, why not? There are so many other manufacturers that make air-cooled bikes. Or air-cooled engine bikes. You could do it. It's quite easy for you to do it. You've got all the tooling. You've got all the know-how. So they've kind of started producing bikes, or continue to produce bikes, that people either don't want, can't afford, or even if they like them and even if they can afford them, there's this kind of weird disconnect for some people. Now, of course, let me draw back again. There's always going to be lots of people out there who absolutely love the company, who absolutely love the brand, and they will never say anything bad against the company. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. If you're that much of a fan and you really like the brand and you think everything that they do is great, that's not a problem. But what we're seeing here is this relationship between the company and the identity of the company and the direction of the company and what the fan base in totality, what they're doing and what they're spending. And the reality is that they're spending less. And that fan base is also not being backfilled by new members, because the demographics are changing, and also younger people are less likely to buy Harley Davidsons because, one, of price, because of economic situation, but also they're thinking about other bikes as well, or because there's a big change in people getting into motorcycles in the first place, and they'd rather go on electric scooters or electric bicycles or, that kind of thing. They're not really looking at motorcycles these days. They're kind of looking at other modes of transport as well. So Harley Davidson on a real sticky situation here in terms of this whole community. Now, I'm not just talking about hog chapters here. I'm talking about the wider groups. You might still be 100% Harley Davidson rider. I still got my bike and I still love it. And there's lots of people who watch my videos say, yeah, I've loved my Harley Davidson. But it's a 1990 Harley Davidson, or it's a 2012 Harley Davidson. It's a 2019 Harley Davidson, whatever it is. It's not a brand new one. So this is the point. For a company like Harley Davidson, they've got to sell new product. It's new bike sales that they have to keep on getting people to buy. Buying used bikes does nothing for the company. It's new bike sales. It's new products. It's new merchandise. That's what they've got to sell. They've got to sell new licenses. They've got to sell new financial packages so people can buy these products as well. That's the kind of thing. It's all new. And if people aren't really buying in the numbers that they used to buy, well, maybe that might be by design by the company, because they say, well, it doesn't matter if the overall sales reduce as long as our profit margins are up. And that's to say, those numbers keep on going down and down, and that's why you've got internal fighting with the board members and investors looking at Harley Davidson and saying, this is not right. This is the way the company, the projection is the company is going to continue to go down. Unless they change something, of course. Unless they do something completely drastic and change the way that the overall community and the overall motorcycling public view Harley Davidson. Not just old man bikes, not just expensive shiny machines that, people might only ride at the weekend, let's say, or that they might be too troublesome, or they might be, they're agricultural, they're like tractors, or they're not reliable enough. All the kind of, the dissenting voices out there, they start to get louder when they can smell that there's something not quite right. And that's what Harley Davidson have been failing to do. They've been failing to support this community and give them good products and be on their side. And that's what a lot of people have started to identify. And I've seen a couple of reports on this, a couple of articles on this, talking about this very thing. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think that Harley Davidson as a company have kind of lost touch with the community, overall community, whichever side of it do you think, in terms of motorcycle clubs, in terms of hog chapters, in terms of just Harley Davidson fans in general? Do you think they've kind of lost a bit of a connection there? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do they have to do to improve the situation? Let us know your thoughts. If you like what I do here, just keep on watching the videos. Don't forget, you can go to the website, RevelatorAlf.com/books for all the motorcycle books and everything else that I sell there. And with that, I'm going to go and get a bit of afternoon tea. Catch you again in the next video coming very soon. Bye now.